is Friday, May 12th, as we get through some of our many issues.
That doesn't seem like it.
So we do have quiz today, but it is homework quiz that is going to be unlocked at end of class. It is due Sunday night. If you don't get it done, so be it. It just goes in as 0. But again, you have weekend. It covers book up through chapter 5. There is a time limit on the quiz. Once you open it, you have 40 minutes to get it done. So do not open quiz until you are ready to take quiz, because just giving you a heads up on that one to try and help you out. Other than that, today we're either going to go through chapter 2 or 3, depending on how much you guys read. And yes, my dogs are out, since we talked about hippies. I figured I would show up with my gripper dogs out. Plus, I figured it would freak out kids, and it turns out the answer is yes. It is easy to freak out kids. Even though Mrs. Butts has hers out, and Clark and Kearns have theirs out. They have their ours are just as open as mine.
No, you said yours are weird.
You said
No, I said I wanted to see everyone.
There's a lot of issues going on there.
I like this
Anyway,
more.
home children, this is what they're freaking out about. So they're just little grippers. What's up, angry child?
No, I
Chapter
didn't.
is longer. Chapter 2 or 3.
Okay, that one was fine.
Look at her.
Yeah, that was fine.
Then, let's see, birthday coming up in less than a week, and we only have one more Friday after this. And then there's that one scene where I had to move those 2 kids because they kept talking, and then one of them kept turning around and wondering why they got in trouble, and we talked about putting them in the hallway. We're like, who could that kid be? You're like, oh yeah, we know exactly who that kid is.
Am I going to the hallway?
Could be, just a moment.
Let me be, I'm under 10 digits.
You want to go in the
And then I'll get a chance on Sunday when I go to Sam's Club to pick up things there. For those of you who are not fans of reading, then this would be where I do have audiobooks posted to help you out. And so that's trying to help you as much as I can. And then that's where you have things from there. And yeah. So today, we can either do chapter 2 or chapter 3. If you've already read chapter 2, we'll talk about it and then do chapter 3. If you've not read chapter 2, then we can't really do that yet, so we'll sort of go back and forth. Let's see, for you guys, we got to hippies. I just left that up to Taunt Cam since her picture was up there.
Where is this?
The one in the middle.
Right there in the middle.
That's Cam.
Yeah.
Yeah, the girl.
How'd you get that?
She sent it to me.
Why?
I don't know, kids are special.
She just wanted to deal with
This is the guy we're going to be talking about today. This is the guy that shows up in chapter 3, where we finally get introduced to Ponyboy. Then this was at the end of chapter 1, the big fight that happened. I just left that up there because fighting is fun. Chapter 2, let's see with you guys, we got to Randy the hippie at the very beginning. And then the hippie house, which comes back because one of the characters is going to go to the hippie house and something bad is going to happen at the hippie house. So it's going to come back and be a thing. Then, so after we stopped reading, there is a scene where Brian talks about why he does not like cops and how he has bad interactions with them. And he tells a story about when he and a friend got drunk on a 5th of vodka. My guess was that you probably don't know what a 5th of vodka is. It does not mean a 5th of the bottle. That whole bottle is a 5th. So that's what it's called because it's considered like a 5th of a gallon or I don't know something. It's been a long time since college. But that whole bottle is considered a 5th. And so, yeah, so I tried to block it out too. So he got drunk on that and then drinking Coke to go along with it. And he says the story being that the police officers found him walking the streets really drunk. So instead of helping him, the police officers slapped him around, put him in the back of the car, drove him to the bad part of town, kicked him out, and then made him walk home from there. He goes, I did learn a lesson, but it wasn't to stop drinking. It was to no longer trust cops. It was the idea that being mean to people doesn't always teach them what you think it does.
Right.
Then he meets Kathy, who is the girl on the front of the book. If you look to the left of him, that is Kathy, who is the girl at the hospital. And with that one, he talks about wanting to flirt with her. And then, one of the things he knows when looking to flirt with her is whether or not she's wearing a class ring. This is a thing you have the option of getting in high school. They used to be really popular back in the day. They sort of faded out, aren't quite as popular now. But for a long time, if you were a girl dating a guy and he had a class ring, he would give you the class ring to wear. And then girls would walk around with like either a class ring on their finger, and you could see that guy's class ring with like his name on there. Sometimes they wore them on a necklace, and you could see it there. But that was your way of knowing that they have a boyfriend. You should not be flirting with them. That's what Brian talks about, the fact that when he starts talking to Kathy, she does not have a class ring, so he starts flirting with her and ends up getting a date with her, and then that's going to be a thing we have coming up. But in case you guys have not seen a class ring, that's what it is. And then they talk about it being a charity hospital where the mom is, and a charity hospital just means that basically it's free. We don't really have charity hospitals anymore because of the U.S. healthcare system is kind of screwed up. But nowadays they're like, just be poor and die. But at one time they used to help people, but not so much anymore. So that's the charity hospital thing they're talking about. So now, in chapter 2, we either read it or we're going to talk about it. So have you guys read the thing that happened with Mike?
Yeah.
Raise hand if you read the thing that happened with Mike. And not quite enough. All right. So I'm going to read that real quick, and then we'll talk about it afterwards because I want to be able to have a conversation, because this is the one that's going to talk about it. It's a race thing. I mean, there's a girl named Connie who's black, and then Mike who's a white guy, and there's a thing that happens between them, and I am curious to see your thoughts on this. It's also a sexism thing between boy and girl, and I'm curious to see your thoughts on that too.
Someone said Juju can relate to Connie.
Juju said what?
So someone in your last period said Juju could relate to Connie.
Yeah.
That was Mr. Brovicast that said that.
That is also true. I kept calling him Connie because Connie is a very angry, bitter person who keeps lashing out at people.
I thought it was because he's black.
And it's also because of the black thing. Because she's angry and lashing out because of being black, and Juju all constantly yells in my class about white people. And so that was the
Is
connection.
that racist?
Goes back and forth with Juju, depending on the day. I'm going to leave this up there because this is Mike who's sitting in there. He hates doctors, so I'm going to remove the doctor. And there's Brian talking to him. And then he's really beat up and looking bad.
That one guy from that one show.
Is it Total?
Yeah, Total Drama Islands.
Nicely done. I was pretty happy when I found it on there.
Why are you? It's so horrible.
That was a great
Because I'm happy when kids recognize things.
Yes.
My brother, it's a show, it's really, I just like the
So page 33, that's when Brian goes back to Mike's room. So I'm going to start there.
Who? The nurse?
Sorry, we had to take care of an issue. Page 33, back to there. 33, 30. There we go. I waited around for Mark, but he didn't show up, so I took the elevator back up to Mom's floor. I went and looked in the room across from Mom's where that kid was supposed to be. I saw him all right, but no sign of Mark. That kid had been hurt bad. He had bandages around his head and across one eye, both arms in slings, and stitches in his lower lip. Hey, are you Brian? He looked out at me in his good eye. Mark said to wait for him here. He'll be right back. He went across the street to the drugstore to buy me some comics. I could tell from the way he talked that he came from a neighborhood like mine. This was likely. I mean, it was a charity hospital. Yeah, come on in. Walk a chair. I did. I didn't know what to say to him. So you're Mark's brother. Don't look much alike. For a minute, I really felt good about Mark's telling this guy that we were brothers. Of course, we didn't look alike. Mark, with his gold hair and strange gold eyes and slight, tense body, and me, big and husky with dark brown hair and eyes. So I said, no, I guess we don't. I got a brother, older guy. We don't look much alike either. I looked around for a no smoking sign. Can I smoke in here? Sure, as long as you don't get caught. Would you mind giving me a few puffs? Okay. I lit up a cigarette and put it between his lips. When I took it back, he said, thanks. I haven't had a cigarette in a week. My name's Mike Chambers. Mine's Brian Douglas. Man, you look awful. What happened? I was beginning to be glad I'd come in after all. It must have been rough being kept in the hospital that gave you the creeps with nobody to talk to. got beat up, he said with a wry smile. I couldn't believe it. I thought he'd been in a car wreck or something. What's the other guy look like? It's a long story. You got time for a long story? Sure. I really do like listening to stuff that's happened to other people. I guess that's why I like to read. Well, if it seems like I'm never going to shut up, just tell me. You and Mark are the first people I've talked to in a long time. There ain't much to say to these nurses. I mean, I can see that. What can you say to nurses? Well, I always had this soft spot for chicks. I was always making like Sir Galahad, opening doors for me, complimenting even the homely ones. And I beat out a lot of guys better looking than me. And they never could figure out why. But it wasn't just a line with me. I guess I'm a sucker. I've been taken a few times, like loaning money to chicks, mom with the South story. But I'll always believe the best about a girl until I'm proved wrong, which is my own hang-up. That explains the way I acted that night. The gang in me was hanging around the drugstore, and this black chick came in to buy some cigarettes. Me? I just see a nice-looking chick with really beautiful eyes, all black and inky soft. I guess I'm a little funny that way, because they just don't get me all upset. I mean, I can see a black guy and a white chick together, and it sure don't bother me. While most white guys can't stand to see that. Like the gang. The minute she walks in, they get all tensed up because black anyone, chick or otherwise, it just don't happen to come around much where I live. I guess she worked downtown and got off late and just stopped in on her way to the bus stop. I think she told me that later. I don't remember too good now. So she gets her cigarettes and starts for the door when a couple of guys block her way. Now, the gang I hang with is a pretty good bunch of guys. A lot of heart, only a couple of wise apples in the group, but see, nothing much been happening. And they were bored, so they started picking on the chick, calling her Black Beauty and some other choice things. They were really getting rude. I was feeling sorry for the girl. She kept her eyes down, just said, "Let me by, please," real soft like. The guys started pushing her around. I mean, not enough to hurt her, but enough to scare her plenty. She just gripped her purse with both hands and tensed all over like she was trying to keep from running, which was pretty smart. Running, that's just an invitation to be chased, and if she got caught, it wouldn't be in a lighted drugstore. The old guy who runs the drugstore had disappeared. He was scared silly of the gang. I don't know why. We'd never done anything to him. Well, one of the guys grabbed hold of her, really got crude. I got fed up. I went over and said, "Let her go," like I meant it. They all looked at me for a while, like they were trying to make up their minds whether or not to jump me. We don't usually go around beating each other up, but it has happened. They finally decided not to. My big brother, he's got a pretty big rep as a tough guy in our neighborhood. If he's in jail now, that's why he don't come to see me. It was his rep, not mine, that stopped him, because I ain't never been known as a tough guy. So they turned her loose and went back to reading comics. I followed the girl outside. She was looking up and down the street, kind of desperate-like, and I knew she'd missed her bus. I said, "Hey, girl, if you missed your bus, I can give you a ride home." She just kept her eyes down. Finally, she said something, but brother, I'm not going to repeat it. I saw then and there she thought I had evil intentions. I don't blame her. Hell, if I'd had to take what she just did, I'd be sore and suspicious too. I said, "Look, I don't want to pick you up or anything." And she gave me a funny look. So I added quick, No, not that you're not real cute or anything. I mean, you'll just have to stay here another hour to catch the next bus. And I'm going to be leaving. And I don't know if those other guys might do. She saw the logic in that, because it was getting dark. Not too many cops come around that area. It's kind of a deserted street. You know how cops are. There's a million over on the ribbon, making sure the nice kids don't kill each other or run each other down, while we can cut each other's throats. I don't even give a damn. And finally, she said she'd let me drive her home. And I had my old Ford parked in the drugstore parking lot. It was really my brother's car, but he said I could drive it any time he got busted, which is often. He's a pretty good guy, but if you've got a rep for fighting, somebody's always trying to take you on. The last time that happened, my brother busted a bottle over the guy's head and got charged with assault with a dangerous weapon. He'd never used weapons before, but he finally got fed up with the whole routine. It wasn't his first offense, so they sat on him kind of hard. And anyway, we got into my Ford, and I can see the poor kid is still scared. She sits hugging the door on her side like she's going to jump out any second. I got a couple of good looks at her. She was real slender. Looked like she sort of swaying in the wind. Excuse me. Like she'd sway in the wind. Her hair was down to her shoulders, and it must have been straightened. She had on a yellow dress and yellow shoes, and she had her straw purse sitting on her lap. She held on to it with one hand and the door handle with the other. She really was cute. I started talking to her about just everything. Would her old lady chew her out because she was late? My old lady did. Man, they never liked anything you did they? But still, sometimes you couldn't get along without them. Did she go to school? I did. But boy, it really a hell's place to spend all day. I wanted to drop out, but the old lady said she'd kill me if I did. I kept talking because that's what I do with animals. When they're hurt and scared, pretty soon they get over being scared. I've got a hang up with animals too. I could tell she was beginning to calm down a little. I mean, at least she let go of the door handle. I even got her to smile once. I forget what I'd been saying. And then I said, I'm sorry about what happened to you back there. Suddenly she started to cry. Man, that got me so shook. Nothing gets me shook like chicks crying. Mike stopped here. I gave him another drag on my cigarette. That's funny. Chicks crying just bore me. Go on, Mike. Just finish your story. Well, I didn't know what to say to him. I finally said, hey, don't cry, which never does any good. She just kept on sobbing, and now and then I'd catch a word or two. And I got the idea that she was fed up with getting walked all over by white people. I can see that. I got fed up with getting walked over by the thugs, teachers, my old man, the upper class rich kids at school. I can see that, right? Hey, do you know that my old man doesn't let my mom come see me? Doesn't let my mom come and see me? Said I was a dumb kid for ever getting in the hospital. Anyway, this chick, she tells me about her problems, and she uses some pretty bad language, but nothing I ain't ever heard before from white chicks. I finally pulled the car over to the curb and reached into my pocket. She sat up straight, got all uptight. What we stopping for? She says. And I said, I thought I had a handkerchief. I guess I don't. I pulled back out onto the street. She looked at me for a minute. I kept staring straight ahead, but I could tell she was watching me. She said, thank you. I drove her home. She lived way out on the north side where most of the black kids live. You know where. It's a pretty lousy neighborhood. It's almost as bad as mine. As I pulled up in front of her house, I could see a bunch of kids hanging around on her porch and in her yard. Well, here you are, I said, a little nervous. For somebody who'd been practicing in her mind how to get the door open, she was pretty slow about getting out. That's how it seemed to me anyway. I think she was tired out from crying so much. Then there were all these black kids around my car. Some big guy opened the girl's door and pulled her out and said, what's the matter, Connie? What happened? I mean, you could tell she'd been crying. Then they opened my door and dragged me out. It seemed like there was 100 black faces staring at me. I guess it was really only like a dozen. It seemed like 100. I just stood there, backed up against the car. Talk about scared. Man, was I scared. And to top it off, the chick had started crying again, so she couldn't talk. Mike paused here for a minute. He was staring off in the distance, and when he started talking again, it was slowly, like he was living the whole thing over again. So the big guy, he comes around to my side of the car. You hurt her, white boy? No, I said. But it didn't sound very loud, so I cleared my throat and said, no, I didn't. So loud that it sounded like I was shouting. It was real quiet. You could hear somebody's TV from down the street, and a dog barking a block away, and Connie's soft sobbing. I could even hear my heart pounding in my ears. Then the big guy said, really quiet like, And what if we don't believe you? And I got so scared. I was about to cry. I said, ask her, huh? You just ask her. And the guy called across the car. Connie, what you want me to do with this white cat? And real soft, her voice was so soft, just like her eyes. She said, kill that white boy. And sure enough, they almost did. There was a long silence. I think Mike had forgotten I was listening to him. Then he took a long breath. So that's how I got here. I must be a dumb kid, like the old man says, though, because I still don't hate him, least of all Connie. I mean, I can almost see why she did it. Almost. I shook my head. That's a rotten thing to happen to anybody. It sure is. Mark's voice came from behind me. He'd been standing in the doorway. I don't know how long. Come on, Brian. Here's your comics. He tossed a couple of monster comics on the bed. As we got into the elevator, Mark said, I'm inclined to agree with his old man. That is one stupid kid. You mean it? I've been thinking about Mike's story. I could see his point about not hating the people who beat him up. Yeah, I mean it. Man, if anybody ever hurt me like that, I'd hate him for the rest of my life. I didn't think much about that statement then, but later I would. And I still do. I think about it and think about it until I think I'm going crazy. That was the part in chapter 2 that I wanted to talk about.
Jumping. She lied.
Why'd she do that?
She didn't lie, because she never says that she got hurt. They just ask, what do you want them to do?
Yeah, but why did she say that?
That's a good question. So,
Maybe something happened to her earlier.
so let's go with, does she hate Mike?
Mr. Brovicast,
No.
what's on my phone?
Me charging you points in the middle of teaching?
Why?
Let me see.
That's gross. Can I have it back
No.
now? I was just asking.
You have 10 more minutes.
Yeah, it's
Wait.
called time and place.
Are we done reading?
I wiped it out.
No, I'm still teaching.
Go out there, Mia.
So, does Connie hate Mike?
Yeah.
Why?
He's
Because
right.
she's white
Ah.
and she's black.
Correct. She is black, he is white.
We're not reading it.
But, yes we are. We're talking.
She was bored. Go out there, he's charging you.
Correct. You don't get to come back in.
No, like, are
No.
we?
Charging you points? Yes.
No.
Because you can't come in until the bell rings? Correct.
Because my
There you go.
friend.
I know, you're not used to being out there. It's a learning process. So, in this one, I don't think she hates Mike. She definitely hates somebody, but it's not Mike. So the question is, who is it she would hate? The gang would be part of it, but expand beyond that. Yeah.
White people.
The white people. And specifically here, I'm guessing it's probably boys because of how they were sexually harassing her while she was in there. And so it comes up that with what she does at the end, when she's slow to get out of the car, I think she understands the decision she's getting ready to make. And it's a hard thing to understand if you've not been in that position. Back when we did Shadow Club, I asked you guys about how much you would like getting revenge and hating other people, and was revenge good? That's what Connie's doing here. She's getting revenge, but she's not getting revenge against Mike. Who's she getting revenge
White
against?
people.
And will she ever have an opportunity in her life to have the ability to beat up somebody like this?
Probably more.
So this is her one chance to get regret, or to get revenge on him. Do you think, or no, I not say, does Mike regret what he did?
No.
Yeah.
Slightly.
Maybe.
From
Kinda.
Gavin?
Why would she do that? Because then it's just gonna make them hate like white people even more.
But he doesn't.
Make white people hate her even more?
Yeah. No, like
They're both gonna hate each other.
I don't know.
Mike doesn't hate her.
No.
And that's what it comes down to. Mike doesn't hate her. If Mike had the opportunity to do all of this again, do you think he would?
No.
Because if he does not help her, what happens to her?
She get beaten up.
Freaking.
Something bad is going to happen to her. So it comes down to that. It's a tough choice. If he had to do it again, I would like to think Mike would still make those exact same choices again, one way or the other, because he does not necessarily hate her. What this part of the book is trying to get to is the idea of being able to let go of hatred and anger when someone makes you mad and not holding on to it. Because what you see here is Kathy holding on to anger and holding on to hatred. And when you guys keep asking why would she do that, it's because when you guys hold on to anger, hold on to hatred, it makes you make choices like that that don't necessarily become easily understood. And so I think it's an interesting debate and idea to get into.
I hate you,
So this next part that we'll read in chapter 3, I'm going to jump around a little bit just to give you guys a preview, and then we'll start reading chapter 3.
You heard what he said?
Well, we're going to get to the school dance coming up. And so at the school dance, we are going to meet two big characters. One is Angela, and this is Brian's ex-girlfriend, the one that is Curly's sister that we found out about early. So she shows up, and we get to find out what kind of person she is. And then Ponyboy, you should recognize. Ponyboy shows back up at this point. And so he comes in this one. And we're going to find out that there is this weird love triangle thing going on between Brian and Angela, who used to be going out, and now Angela has a crush on Ponyboy, and it's going to lead to an issue where someone goes to the hospital. Chapter 4, they're going to have a conversation where it gets a little confusing, where they talk about politics. They're going to talk about whether you are left or right, and he's like, I don't think it matters, it's kind of stupid, which I agree with. But if you did not know, left is usually thought of as Democrat, right is thought as Republican, left is the donkey, right is the elephant. For the most part, I'm guessing you guys probably don't care a whole lot, which is perfectly fine. I just want you to understand that part when he talks about it. Who is it that we know that does the hot wiring?
Brian.
We're going to find out that he does it again, and he gets himself in trouble. He gets himself caught.
That's the
Captain
Oh.
Pajama.
Captain Underwear.
Captain Underpants, or Captain Pajamas, as he was also known as. And so, yeah, I was happy when I found that one. But then something happens after the hot wiring. And then we get to the last chapter you'll have to read for the quiz. They're going to talk about playing pool again, because we're going to find out there is a way that they make money there. And then brass knuckles come in. Where these are really heavy that you can use in a fight. They are illegal because there's no reason, to have them unless you're trying to get yourself in trouble. So those are the brass knuckles that one of them is going to interact with. They are also going to have a conversation about LSD and hippies, because one of the main characters is suspected to have started taking it. This is, for those of you who pay attention in wellness, it's the one that it gives like hallucinations where you see things that aren't there. We're going to have a conversation about it coming up on Monday, because it's going to play a big role in the second half. They talk about cruising on a ribbon, which is just on a road. It was a thing that used to be really popular where kids would get in cars and you would just drive up and down a road back and forth, and you would like try to flirt with people. And so they're going to talk about cruising on this ribbon. And then they go to a drive-in restaurant. Oh, sorry. Orange Camaro. This is one of the things they're going to be talking about driving. And then they talk about sitting in a bench seat. Nowadays we have what are called bucket seats. Like most cars you're in, it's like a little seat that's just for you. A bench seat is what it looks like a bench. And so it goes all the way across. These were popular because you could put a whole bunch of people on the seat at once. Like you could get like 4 or 5 people in the front seat. It wasn't safe, but what teenager cares about safety?
Those are like some skinny people.
You can have skinny people, yes. If you have bigger people, you're probably not going to fit 4 cardies across there.
You say 4 parties.
4 cardies would probably not work as well. Maybe 2.5 cardies. And then there's a scene where they get into a fight with these boys in a Corvette. Yes.
Did they have seatbelts?
Not a whole lot of seatbelts, no. They might have existed, there's just not many people who use them.
Did the cops just not care, probably?
There just wasn't a law, so there wasn't anything to count. A lot of cars didn't even have them.
Actually?
So yeah, I mean that's.
When did it become like a law?
1930s.
Not until like the 80s, the 70s, 80s, right around there.
You said this was in the 70s.
It's early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. I want to say it was around my childhood, which was like early 80s. Yeah, because I remember not wearing a seatbelt for a long time, and I actually got into a car wreck when I was a kid. Smashed the windshield. Didn't die.
Did you die?
Still here. Yes, I died. I'm still alive though.
What?
Yeah, it was a crazy car wreck. I died and came back to
All in
life.
heaven.
R.I.P.
When they talk about going to a Drive-in restaurant, again, this is what they're talking about in this one. They all hang out there and run around. That's drive-in restaurant. All right. Quizzy thing is not due till midnight on Sunday to give you a weekend to work on it, but I figured we'll go ahead and start chapter 3
I'm on
to try and
How
give
much
you guys
time do
this.
we have left?
I know, like the class just keeps on going. It's like you're here forever.
Mr. Brovia,
I broke your
Come on.
have more.
for the quiz, do you have to read chapter 5 or just end on chapter 5?
That's a good question. I bet there's directions in a whole bunch of places that explain that.
Where?
Mr. Booyah,
It's not being mean to be.
It says chapters 1 through 5.
give me more tape.
So, wait.
Give you what?
More tape so I can fix this.
Chapter 3, which is on 43 right after we stopped. I'd been hunting all over town for a job. I really needed one, but they're not easy to come by if you're 16 years old with no experience and no contacts. And I finally hit upon a great idea. I would ask Charlie for a job. That's the bartender from the beginning. After all, we were friends, and he thought I was a smart kid, and having been one himself, he appreciated it. Besides, I figured I'd really dig working in a bar. Charlie's answer was short and to the point.
No.
No. I was sitting at the bar, smoking a cigarette and trying to fight down my anger and disappointment. I'd been hitchhiking all over town for a week trying to get a job. You guys know what hitchhiking is?
Yeah, what's up with him?
That's what Ted Bundy used to
Where
do.
you put your thumb out, it'll give you a ride.
Thumb out and then
I thought that
someone
was-
picks you
That's
up
how
in a
Ted
car.
Bundy
Yeah.
killed people. down there.
Well, with the smoking laws, because he's 16.
Mr. Brovia.
Probably a lot more lax back then
Yeah.
also.
Isn't that how Ted Bundy killed people?
I don't know. I wasn't hanging out with
I
him.
won the Ted Bundy.
No, wait. No,
Trying to get a job. Well, why not? I asked, as soon as I thought I could talk without blowing my stack. For one thing, do you know how often the plainclothes cops stop in? Do you think they're just going to let a miner work in here? You're lucky you can just come in and sit down. Besides, Brian, it gets rough in here late at night. Yeah, I know. You're a rough kid. Every kid thinks that. But you better just take my word for it that you'd be better off someplace else. Like where? There ain't no jobs in this town. I've been all over. You don't think this crummy joint ain't last on my list? I was mad. Charlie didn't even get upset. He just grinned. Brian, you're an honest kid in most ways, but you lie like a dog. Take Mark. I wouldn't trust him around anything that wasn't nailed down, but I believe everything he says. I would trust you with my wife if I had one. I trust your actions, but I double-check most of your statements. You just think about it. I think you'll come up with a reason why you haven't got a job before now. Just think about it. I was too mad to think about it right then, but I promised myself I would later. I listened to everything Charlie said because you...
Oh my gosh.
I thought the same thing. That was a bold move. I guess we'll go ahead and stop there since someone is now down to 6 points.
You told me 3?